Today we are in Hanley, right outside St John's Church, which is now a mosque. Yes, you heard it right, mosque. Now we have covered this building before, so I'm going to read you some fun facts about this place right now. This place is now called the Darul Farah Mosque. It is. So it's no longer called St John's Church, it's called the Darul Farah Mosque.
Thousand churches of several denominations have closed here in the last decade. Despite a bounce back after the COVID-19 pandemic, church attendance remains in decline in Britain, with research showing a fourth of Anglican churches are no longer holding weekly services. Only 6% of British adults identify themselves as practicing Christians.
There are many reasons why churches are closing down. Part of that is the collapse in faith that has occurred across Western Europe and now the United States. When a church stops being used for its primary purpose, for the worship of God, it's a tragedy. And with that comes the loss for a community of the shared space where memory is held.
So yeah, I mean, hello? All right.
Can I help you?
Sorry?
Put the camera down.
Pardon? Don't touch my camera. No, don't touch my camera. Don't touch my camera. This is private property.
It is private property. You're not.
No, this camera is my property. If you damage this,
in private property here, mate.
Right.
So let me just.
I'm just making a video about the church.
Did you ask for permission?
Hey?
Did you ask for permission?
Didn't know I needed permission.
You don't need
Did you
permission.
ask for permission to dig up people's gravestones? Hey?
This is the church that's been purchased up and it's being converted into a mosque. You can see there the last headstone standing.
I'll get there in the end. Another example of the lesser spotted. Christian churches all over the UK for the last 20, 30, probably 40 years have been being demolished and repurposed. They've been turned into houses, blocks of flats, HMOs, mosques, synagogues, community centres, because people don't go to church. When I was a child, and in fact when I first moved here, which is just over 30 years ago, you could go to a church on a Christmas morning and it would be packed. And it would be full of people singing carols and all the rest of it. I went to our local church, which has been there 1,000 odd years, and there were less than 15 people in it. People do not go to church anymore, not in many, many places. I doubt that man's gone to church. So they deconsecrate the buildings and they sell them off because they are really expensive to maintain. That's not even a particularly old church, for heaven's sake. Gravestones are moved all the time, everywhere. Sometimes the dead are also moved, and that is done under very specific circumstances. But a lot of times they just, local church moves headstones all the time so they can mow the grass. People, a headstone is moved, somebody's been there God knows how long, nobody alive remembers that person, they move the headstone, other people have put it on top. There's a lot of people buried in our local churchyard. It's been there for 1,000 years, for heaven's sake, an awful lot of people under there. If you do not use your local church and your local church cannot basically support itself, then it will be sold off because nobody needs or wants that building anymore. In this case, another group of people who believe in God, in a same God as it happens, in a slightly different form, they want to take that place over, convert it to somewhere suitable for their faith and keep it going. And I think that's a brilliant thing because it is still a building of community, of religion and of faith. You can't complain when buildings that you don't use and things that you don't want are taken over by people who do want them and do use them. And the reason? You're a That's it. Sorry, that's it. It's not disgusting. It's perfectly normal. When I see you campaigning to stop people turning a disused chapel into a house, I might take you seriously. But you're not doing that, are you? And we know you're not.
Now, the particular example of St John's Church, Hanley, while I'm not an expert and know all the details, is indeed a Grade 2-star listed building, but the churchyard itself and its individual tombstones are not listed. So the building is being repurposed under planning permission and with careful guidance from the local councils, architects and archaeologists. The churchyard is being built over as a car park, but no burials are being disturbed. A concern remains about the treatment of the headstones, and unfortunately many headstones have been removed, relaid, repurposed within Christian churchyards over the last century, and many of them dislocated from their graves. And this seems to be the same thing that happens everywhere rather than anything disrespectful or an act of desecration. The idea that 19th century gravestones should not be removed without asking the permission of those that put them up and their descendants is I'm sorry, just for the birds. That hasn't happened and it doesn't happen. And this churchyard and its church have been abandoned, disused since 1985. So in most people's living memory, this has not been an active space of worship or commemoration, and certainly no new burials have gone in there for many decades. I don't know exactly how long. So this is stoked outrage by the far right. This is not in the same discussion. It's fully within planning permission, it's fully legal, and it's putting back into use a historic building within careful restrictions on what changes can take place to the building itself, and no disturbance is happening of graves beneath the modern churchyard. The gravestones themselves are being removed and moved around, but I don't see any evidence they're being desecrated or destroyed. This church has been sitting without use since the 1980s, so for 40 years it has been under potential threat of vandalism, of disrepair in all manner of forms, from birds, animals accessing or damaging the structure, mould, rain damage, potential arson, all manner of potential damage and decay. And this is going to be turned around by its repurposing as a mosque. What would you prefer? It's left to be abandoned, left for the pigeons to roost in, left for the rats to infest? This is the problem. You may not particularly be religious and you may prefer these spaces to be adopted for general public use, maybe, I don't know, as a community centre or a school, but this is a legal process of purchase, redevelopment and reuse. And as a heritage specialist and an archaeologist, I see that as only for the benefit of the significance of that structure